I was standing in the kitchen when the call came through. It was late, too late for anyone decent to be calling. The apartment was quiet, the hum of the refrigerator the only sound besides the low whistle of the kettle I'd forgotten to take off the stove. I was still in scrubs, my name badge dangling from the front pocket, and I hadn't even had the chance to change after my ER shift. I picked up the phone without checking the caller ID, expecting maybe a nurse on night duty or one of my classmates asking about a lab report. What I got instead was her voice, sharp, high, smug. "You might want to sit down for this," she said, and I already knew it was going to be bad. It was Talia, my wife's sister. "Talia," I muttered, already rubbing the bridge of my nose. "It's midnight." She giggled like it was the best time of day to ruin someone's life. "I just bought my dream house. Marble floors. Ocean view. You won't believe how perfect it is." Then, a pause. "Oh, right. You're probably wondering where I got the money." I said nothing. Just waited. "Well, remember that college fund your grandpa left you? The one you were clinging to like a pathetic little dream." She laughed harder now. "I took it. All $800,000. You're never going to be a doctor, Miles. Time to wake up." I didn't say anything at first. Not out of shock, more like patience. I placed my hand on the counter. The marble was cold beneath my fingers. Smooth. Steady. Just like me. She went on, her voice dripping with the kind of satisfaction only someone deeply insecure could fake. "You always thought you were better than me. Reading those books. Talking about med school like it was some big noble thing. But I'm the one with the view now. Not you." I looked around my kitchen. It was small but clean. My textbooks were still open on the table, notes scrawled in the margins. A half-finished anatomy model rested by the coffee machine. I thought about telling her right then. Telling her she didn't win. That her so-called triumph was just a spark in the wind, already dying out before she even lit the match. But instead, I smiled. "Interesting," I said calmly. "And how exactly did you manage that?" "Oh, you'll see," she said, confident. "Soon enough." Then she hung up. I stood there a moment longer, the silence returning like an old friend. I didn't feel anger. No rage bubbling up. No shouting or cursing. Just amusement. Because what Talia didn't know, what she never even considered, was that I wasn't stupid. I'd moved the money months ago. The trust my grandfather left me wasn't sitting around waiting to be stolen. I had taken precautions. Layers of them. She thought she had pulled the rug out from under me. She didn't realize I'd already replaced the floor. I took a breath and walked over to my laptop. Opened the secure folder labeled Personal Projects and clicked on one called Operation Mirage. The name still made me chuckle. Inside was a detailed web of everything I'd built over the last 3 years. Security codes, transfer receipts, lawyer correspondence, backup documentation. It was all there. The fund had been legally relocated and protected by a firm I trusted more than my own family. That $800,000? It wasn't just locked away, it was invisible. Unless you had the right credentials, it looked like it had already been spent. Which meant when Talia went sniffing, she probably found a shiny decoy account, a fake one I created months ago for this exact kind of situation. She'd taken the bait. I leaned back in my chair and took a slow breath. My heart wasn't racing. My hands weren't shaking. I wasn't even surprised. See, I knew who she was. From the moment she married Jonas, Clara's brother, I saw right through the expensive perfume, fake smile, and designer shoes. Talia was the type who played nice at brunch but searched her bedroom when you weren't home. She'd always made snide comments about me being too old for med school or still chasing childhood fantasies. But I kept my distance. I smiled. I nodded. And I planned. Clara, my wife, never saw it. Or maybe she didn't want to. "She's just curious," she'd say when Talia asked questions like, "How much is med school these days?" Or, "Did you really quit accounting for this?" Clara brushed it off as sisterly nosiness. But I saw it differently. That wasn't curiosity. That was reconnaissance. She was gathering data, waiting for an opening. And tonight, she thought she'd found one. I opened my messages. Nothing from Clara. Not yet. I figured Talia hadn't told her. Or maybe she had and assumed Clara would be proud. But that would come later. The fallout. The shock. The realization. For now, I closed the folder and reopened my textbooks. There was a clinical module I still needed to finish. That dream Talia mocked? It was still very much alive. Still beating. Still moving forward. I glanced at the clock. 12:47 a.m. Most people would have been rattled. Shaken by what just happened. But I wasn't most people. I knew Talia had just crossed a line she couldn't uncross. And the deeper she went into this fantasy where she thought she'd outsmarted me, the worse it would sting when reality hit. She didn't just try to take money. She tried to end my future. But I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to argue. I wasn't even going to warn her. I was going to let her believe it for just a little longer. Let her decorate that house. Throw that housewarming party. Smile for pictures in front of someone else's illusion. Because when the truth landed, it wouldn't just be a crack in her story. It would be an earthquake. I stood up, walked over to the window, and looked out at the dark city. Somewhere out there, Talia was sipping wine, laughing with Jonas, thinking she'd just rewritten the story of my life. What she didn't realize was, I was already 3 steps ahead, and I hadn't even made my first move yet. It was 3 days later when the first crack appeared. I got the call while I was walking home from campus, still holding a protein bar in one hand and flipping through lab notes on my phone with the other. The sun was going down, casting a golden glaze over the quiet street, and for once, things felt peaceful. Until my phone buzzed. A number I didn't recognize. Normally, I'd ignore it. But something told me to pick up. Hello, I said, adjusting my backpack strap. There was silence for a beat. Then a familiar voice burst through the line, this time not so smug. Where is it? Talia's voice snapped like glass under pressure. Where's the money? I stopped walking. I'm sorry, who is this? Don't play dumb with me, she hissed. The transfer didn't go through. The account said insufficient funds. I checked it 3 times. Where is it? I let out a quiet breath and leaned against a lamppost. I could almost picture her pacing back and forth, her nails digging into her phone, mascara probably smudging at the edges. She wasn't gloating anymore. Her voice had turned sharp, brittle, like a balloon stretched too tight. I'm not sure what you mean, I said, keeping my tone level. You said you used the college fund. If that's true, then shouldn't it be gone already? There's only $128 in the account, she shrieked. Don't mess with me, Miles. I saw the statement. I saw the balance. Where did it go? I tilted my head, trying not to smile. Sounds like you got the wrong account. Then I hung up. That was the first time I truly felt the shift. Before that call, she thought she had one. She'd already started living her victory in her head. The house. The bragging rights. The satisfaction of crushing someone else's future just for fun. But now? Now she was starting to see the smoke. It wasn't long before the second call came, this time from Jonas, her husband. I ignored it. Then Clara started texting. Not right away, but by the evening she was blowing up my phone like a telemarketer with a deadline. Clara, can you call me right now? Please. Clara, what's going on with Talia? Clara, she said you tricked her? What is happening? I didn't answer right away. I wanted her to sit with that confusion for a little while. See, I'd spent years learning to stay calm, especially in chaos. Working in hospitals teaches you that. It's not the loudest one who's in control, it's the quiet one. The one still thinking when everyone else is shouting. Later that night, I called her. She picked up on the first ring. Miles, she breathed, her voice low, urgent, like someone trying not to wake a sleeping child. What happened with Talia? She's freaking out. She said you moved the money, that she had proof it was yours, and then suddenly it was gone. I sat at the edge of my bed, looking at the photo on the nightstand. It was us at a picnic from 3 years ago, back when things felt simpler. Before secrets. Before lies. Before people started choosing sides. I don't know what she's talking about, I said plainly. Come on, she whispered. Don't do this. If there's something going on. There is, I cut in. But not what she thinks. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't have to. I could hear her breathing shift on the other end, like she knew something wasn't lining up anymore. I never left that money sitting in one account, I continued. I moved it last year. Legally. Through a trust. With a firm your sister never even thought to check. And I never told you because I wasn't sure who I could trust anymore. There was a long pause. She didn't deny it. She didn't say anything like, you can trust me. She just breathed. I could feel the weight of her silence pressing against the line. And in that moment, I realized something. She might not have helped Talia, but she never stopped her either. She never warned me. Never asked why her sister was asking so many questions. Never once wondered out loud why Talia kept asking what day I got my financial aid disbursement or what bank I used. You let her close enough, I said gently, and she did exactly what I expected her to do. That's not fair, she said weakly. I didn't know she'd try to take it, but you didn't stop her either. And that was the truth, wasn't it? She didn't steal from me. She just stood there while someone else did. We said nothing for a while. Then she asked, "So, what now?" I looked around my room. Same textbooks. Same lamp. Same apartment I'd built for myself piece by piece while they mocked my choices. I thought about the way Talia had laughed on that first call. The way Clara never saw it coming. "Now," I said slowly, "we wait." Wait for what? For her to realize the house she tried to buy, I said, was built on sand. The truth was, I had already received an alert from the bank. The transfer Talia tried to make bounced back and flagged her name. The law firm that handled my trust had already informed me they'd be initiating a case. And the fake account? It was tracked. Every click, every login, every attempt she made was recorded, complete with timestamps, IP addresses, and screenshots. She didn't just attempt fraud. She documented it. I could hear Clara's breath catch. "Are you pressing charges?" "I don't have to," I said. She walked into this herself. And that was the beauty of it. No shouting. No threats. Just truth, gently placed where it needed to be. Let the system take care of the rest. Let her see that money doesn't replace integrity. Let her learn that some people are quiet not because they're weak, but because they're preparing. I ended the call. Then I sat back and watched the city lights through my window. She had made her move. Now it was my turn. I didn't sleep much that night. Not because I was anxious, but because my mind was running through details. Quiet details. The kind most people overlook. But I've always been someone who noticed patterns. You don't get far in medicine or in life, though, by ignoring what's right in front of you. And for the past few years, I'd kept files. Notes. Little things Talia probably assumed were long forgotten. Except I don't forget. I archive. It started with the mortgage scam. Her name popped up back in 2019. Buried under her ex-boyfriend's name. But her fingerprints were all over the paperwork. She got away with it because the victim didn't press charges. That guy just wanted to move on. Me? I'm not like that. I don't move on. I wait. I remember the first time I caught her in a lie. She was bragging at a family barbecue about selling luxury handbags online. All authentic, she said. Straight from Italy. But I saw one of the labels poking out of a delivery box in her car. The spelling was wrong. I looked it up that night. Fake designer imports, sold through burner accounts. At the time, I said nothing. She wasn't my problem. But when she touched my future, that changed everything. The next morning, I went to a storage unit I hadn't opened in months. I kept a lot of things there. Textbooks, old journals, spare apartment furniture. But more importantly, I kept a locked file cabinet. Inside was a folder labeled Contingency. It held everything. Printouts, photocopies, emails, even a USB drive that had screen recordings of conversations from years ago. Most people delete receipts. I saved mine. Back when Clara and I were still newly married, Talia had asked to borrow my laptop during a holiday dinner. She said her phone died and she needed to check a rideshare. I'd forgotten I had my browser set to save history. A few days later, I found searches that weren't mine. Can you move college fund into joint account without spouse? And how to disguise large bank transfer under gift. That was 2020. Again, I said nothing. But I did start saving logs. It might sound paranoid, but you don't grow up watching people betray each other and not learn to protect yourself. My own father disappeared when I was 9, left us one night, and never came back. My mother never saw it coming. Since then, I've trusted actions more than words. Talia always said she was family, but her actions always told the real story. So when she called me again that afternoon, I didn't flinch. "This is illegal," she barked. "You're going to pay for this." "You sure about that?" I asked calmly. "Because I have everything. Every text. Every login attempt. Even the fake profile you used when you pretended to be Clara to access my student portal." She was silent. Then she hung up. But I wasn't done. I sent her an email. No threats. Just facts. Attached were 3 PDFs. One showing the chain of custody for the trust fund. Another showing her IP address attempting unauthorized access. And the third, a document from her past. It was a scanned copy of a settlement agreement from 2 years ago, one she signed privately to avoid public charges after a client accused her of defrauding them in a home renovation deal. She'd signed a non-disclosure clause. But I wasn't the press. I wasn't a lawyer. I was just a guy she tried to ruin. I wrote one line below the attachments. "Before you dig a hole for someone else, make sure you're not already standing in one." I sent it. Then I went back to studying. See, the thing about people like Talia is they assume no one sees them. They move through life cloaked in charm and fast words, always laughing, always acting like they're the smartest in the room. But smart doesn't mean invincible. Eventually, the mask slips. And when it does, someone like me is usually standing there quietly, patiently, holding every piece of the puzzle. Clara texted me later that night. Just 4 words. What did you send her? I ignored it. She could ask me in person. Instead, I prepared for the next phase. I wasn't interested in revenge. This wasn't about hurting her the way she tried to hurt me. It was about stopping the pattern. She wasn't going to do this to anyone else, not without consequences. That's when I got a message from someone I didn't expect. His name was Jordan, a guy I barely remembered from one of Clara's holiday parties a few years back. He was Talia's ex. I remembered him as quiet, always on his phone. Never made eye contact. At the time, I thought he was just shy. Turns out, he was documenting everything. Hey, his message read. Saw what happened. You're not the first. He attached a folder. It was filled with screenshots, texts, voice notes, even an old clip from a phone recording where Talia joked about rearranging accounts and learning how to look legit online. My stomach twisted as I watched it. She'd been doing this for years, using people, then discarding them. I replied to Jordan, thanked him, asked if he'd be willing to talk on the record if this ever went further. He said yes. I wasn't smiling. I wasn't angry. I was just resolved. There was a difference between spite and self-defense. She'd crossed into dangerous ground, and now she was going to feel what it was like to lose control. For the first time in years, I slept easy. I wasn't scared of what she'd do next. I already knew. She was going to try to run, but I had already blocked the exits. The last person I expected to see at my door that morning was Clara. It was a Sunday, quiet, with the soft buzz of a city that hadn't fully woken up yet. I just sat down with a cup of coffee and was halfway through reviewing notes for an upcoming exam when there was a knock, 3 soft taps, too familiar to ignore. I opened the door slowly, expecting a neighbor, maybe a package left behind. But there she stood, in a long beige coat, sunglasses perched on her head like she was stepping out of a brunch invite, not the aftermath of a family disaster. She smiled. That was the part that threw me. She smiled like we hadn't been talking in clipped sentences and unanswered messages. Like the entire week hadn't been a slow-motion landslide. Can we talk? She asked, as if this were just some overdue conversation we'd both been meaning to have over coffee. I didn't answer. Just stepped aside and let her in. She walked in like she used to, like she still had the right, like nothing had changed. But it had. The air in the apartment was different now. Everything she used to leave behind, the scent of her perfume, the way she hummed under her breath in the kitchen, none of that lived here anymore. This space was mine now. Fully mine. She sat on the couch, crossed one leg over the other, and folded her hands in her lap. I want to know what's going on, she said carefully, like she was handling something fragile. Talia's losing her mind. She says you ruined her, that you sent her files that could get her arrested. She's saying you've been watching her for years. I sat across from her. Not close. Not tense. Just quiet. Did you think I wouldn't protect myself? I asked. She didn't answer right away. You've known your sister your entire life, and you're surprised that I didn't trust her. I didn't know she was going to steal from you, but you knew she was capable of it. That landed. She looked down at her hands. For a moment, I thought she might apologize. But what she said instead was softer, more complicated. I didn't want to see it. I didn't want to believe she'd go that far. And what about you? I asked. What exactly were you doing while she was poking around my accounts, asking about my tuition, my funding, my passwords? She blinked. I didn't think it was serious. That was the problem. She never thought it was serious. Not when her sister mocked my decision to go back to school. Not when she laughed at how I lived modestly to stay debt-free. Not when she let her family say I was wasting her time. Clara liked the image of support, but not the work that came with it. I stood up and walked to the window, watching as a kid rode his scooter down the sidewalk with reckless joy. His mother chased behind him, smiling but alert. That's what love looked like, presence. Not silence. Not detach. I didn't ruin her, Clara. She just caught herself in the mirror. You really had all that saved? She asked. I turned to face her. What did you expect? That I'd just let it happen? That I'd let her walk away with my future because she felt entitled to it? She pressed her lips together, then whispered, no. But I wasn't sure if she meant that as an answer or a regret. I sent her what she needed to see. Nothing more. I didn't leak it. I didn't threaten her. I gave her a chance to stop. And if she doesn't? Then she'll find out what real consequences feel like. She leaned back, sighing. She's scared. Genuinely scared. Her husband's furious. He didn't know she was doing any of this. I didn't doubt that. Jonas was a fool for a long time, but not a criminal. She made her choices, I said. And she's going to live with them. Silence settled between us for a moment. Then she asked the question I'd been waiting for. Are you doing this because of me? I looked at her, really looked at her. And for the first time in a long time, I saw someone I used to love but no longer needed. There was sadness in her eyes, but there was also something else, guilt, maybe, or realization. I'm doing this because I deserve to have a future, I said. Because I worked too hard to let someone take it just because they could. I'm not looking for revenge. I'm protecting what's mine. Clara didn't argue, didn't cry, didn't beg. She just nodded, like she finally understood what I meant. That this wasn't about payback. This was about survival. When she stood to leave, she looked around the apartment one last time. Her gaze paused on the kitchen where she used to dance barefoot on Saturday mornings. On the bookshelf where she once left silly notes between chapters. Then she looked back at me. I hope you finish what you started, she said. I hope you become the doctor you've always dreamed of being. I gave her a small nod. I will. Then I watched her walk out the door, closing it gently behind her. I didn't lock it right away. I stood there for a moment, hand on the knob, listening to the soft echo of her heels fading down the hallway. And when the silence settled in for good, I smiled. Not because she left, but because I stayed. 2 days passed. 2 quiet, satisfying days. No calls. No knocks. No sudden visits or fake apologies. The kind of stillness I hadn't experienced in months. I'd been sleeping better, studying longer, eating real meals again. When you're constantly being watched, judged, or manipulated, you forget how peaceful life can be when nobody's reaching into your pocket or your future. Then, on a rainy Wednesday afternoon, it happened. The headline showed up on my phone while I was halfway through a clinical video on nerve damage. At first, I didn't believe it. I thought maybe it was one of those spammy clickbait alerts I forgot to unsubscribe from. But the title was real. Local luxury property deal collapses amid financial discrepancy investigation. I clicked on it. There she was, Talia, front and center, smiling in a photo that had clearly been taken during her "I'm better than all of you" phase. She stood in front of a newly built home on the coast, holding a champagne glass and wearing a silk dress that screamed stolen money. The article didn't mention her by name. It only referred to an anonymous buyer whose payment attempt triggered multiple flags, but I knew. I didn't even have to read the rest. She tried to use the fake fund again. This time, it bit back. I put my phone down and sat very still. I didn't feel joy. Not exactly. It was more like confirmation. Like watching a slow-moving storm finally touch down where you always knew it would. She tried to buy the house in cash. Probably thought that would make her seem impressive. But the flag transfer triggered an investigation. And with the paper trail she left, it wasn't hard for the bank's fraud unit to piece it all together. She was done, and I didn't have to lift a single finger. Later that evening, I got a call. This time, I answered. It was Jonas. His voice was flat, tired. There was no anger in it, no defense. Just quiet. I didn't know, he said. I believed him. I figured. She told me it was a gift, he continued. That some investor backed her dream. Said she didn't want to make you feel bad, so she kept it quiet. I let out a low breath. She's good at lying. He was silent for a moment, then asked, Is it true? What you sent her? All that stuff? Is it real? Every word. He didn't argue. Didn't ask for proof. I think part of him always knew. She's in trouble, he said after a while. The contract's been canceled. She's being looked at by the fraud department. She's talking about leaving town. Running only works when nobody's watching, I replied. She's being watched now. Then he asked me something I didn't expect. Are you going to let them press charges? I sat with the question for a long moment. Then I said, I don't have to let anything happen. This isn't in my hands anymore. She made choices. Now she deals with the outcome. Jonas didn't respond. He just thanked me quietly, like someone who'd finally seen the mess they'd been standing in for years. After the call, I got up and opened my laptop. There was a live listing for the house, the same one she bragged about during that first call. The one she said had an ocean view and marble floors. It was back on the market, but now it had a disclaimer. Buyer's application denied due to irregular funding. That sentence alone told me everything I needed to know. She wasn't just exposed. She was humiliated. The agents who welcomed her with champagne now wouldn't return her calls. The sellers who smiled for her Instagram photos probably saw her as a liability. The house she posed in, the life she tried to manufacture overnight that was never really hers. Just a shadow she borrowed for a moment before it turned to dust. That's the thing about building dreams on stolen ground. Sooner or later, the ground gives way. I didn't celebrate. I didn't post anything or call anyone. Instead, I went for a walk. The rain had stopped. The air smelled like earth and metal, like the city was freshly cleaned. I passed the same bookstore I used to stop at during med school prep nights. The clerk inside still had his glasses halfway down his nose, reading some thick novel. I nodded to him through the window. He nodded back. Life was moving again. I was still standing, still studying, still dreaming. And she? She was unraveling. I remembered something my grandfather once told me. I was 16, angry at a kid who tried to make me look stupid during a school presentation. I wanted to fight, wanted to embarrass him. My grandfather had put his hand on my shoulder and said, "The best revenge is a calm life they can't reach." He was right, because here I was, calm, focused, untouchable. Talia tried to rob me of my future. Instead, she handed me proof that I was doing the right thing all along. I walked for another hour, letting the city swallow up my thoughts. By the time I got home, I didn't feel heavy anymore. I felt free. I made myself a cup of tea, sat at my desk, and picked up my textbook. There was still a long way to go before I earned my white coat. Still exams. Still rotations. Still nights where sleep would be a luxury. But for the first time in a long while, there was no one standing in my way. It was a Thursday morning when the unexpected happened again. My phone rang while I was sitting on a campus bench, sipping a barely warm coffee and flipping through my pharmacology notes. I recognized the number immediately, though I hadn't saved it in years. That voice had a way of sticking in your head, even if you tried to leave it behind. It was her mother, the woman who used to look me up and down like I was a broken elevator stuck between floors. The woman who once told Clara that I was a burden with ambition, like dreaming big and starting over was something to be ashamed of. I stared at the screen for a moment. I could have ignored it. Let it ring until it stopped. Let her leave a voicemail I'd never check. But curiosity won. I wanted to hear what kind of words she thought I deserved now. I answered, "Hello." There was a pause. Then that voice, thinner than I remembered, slipped through the receiver. "I heard what happened," she said, skipping any greeting. "I think we need to talk." I took a breath, stood from the bench, and walked to a quieter path near the side of the library. "I'm listening," I said flatly. "She's not herself," she began, and I nearly laughed right there, as if Talia had ever been someone else. "I don't know what she was thinking. She's just always been impulsive. But you know her heart." "No," I cut in, my voice calm but sharp. "I know her choices. That's what I know. And I know she tried to take something that didn't belong to her." Her mother sighed like she had the weight of the world on her shoulders, though I knew it was just her guilt trying to wear a crown. "Do you really want her to be arrested?" she asked. "She's being investigated. I'm not involved in what happens next. I've already made that clear. But you could make a call," she pressed. "You could tell the bank it was a misunderstanding, that you moved the money and forgot to update her, that it wasn't her fault." I stopped walking. My hand tightened around my phone. "I could lie for her," I said slowly. "Is that what you're asking me to do?" She didn't answer right away, which meant yes. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't just about Talia. This was about all of them. Their whole family lived off the idea that they were always one explanation away from getting away with everything. That apologies only mattered if they came with conditions. That consequences were something for other people. "You want me to clean up her mess?" I said. "Because the idea of her facing real accountability scares you more than what she actually did." "She's your wife's sister," she said, like it was a magic phrase that should erase the betrayal. "We're family." "No," I replied. "You're not. You haven't been since the day she decided I didn't deserve a future. You're being cruel." "No, I'm being clear." I heard her breath catch. She wasn't used to people saying no. Not in her house. Not in her circle. She built her life out of manipulation masked as charm, and she expected me to be the same desperate man who smiled through insults at Sunday dinners. But that man was gone, and the new one had receipts. "I'm not going to stop what's already in motion," I said. She made her decisions. Let her own them. There was a stretch of silence, heavy and bitter. Then, in a quieter voice, she said something I didn't expect. "She's scared, you know. Not of court. Not of the police. She's scared people will find out who she really is. That part, I believed. Talia built her world on image. She prided herself on being composed, fashionable, admired. Her social media was a highlight reel of brunches, designer shoes, and inspirational quotes about success. But none of it was real. It was a costume stitched together with lies and borrowed credit. And now the seams were showing. She should be scared, I said. Because if people knew half of what I know, they wouldn't just cancel her, they'd pity her. Her mother's voice dropped to a whisper. Please, if you have anything else, don't release it. Don't ruin her. I stared out at the empty lawn behind the science building, where two squirrels chased each other through the leaves, free and unaware of how heavy some people's lives could get. She already ruined herself, I said. I just stopped pretending not to notice. Then I ended the call. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel angry. I just felt done. Done protecting people who wouldn't protect me. Done cleaning up behind a family that never once picked up after themselves. Later that evening, Clara texted me. She told Mom to call you. I didn't know until after. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I put my phone down and went back to my notes. There were exams coming. Rotations. Interviews. Real life. And none of them involved her family anymore. I had work to do. I had a future to build. Not from revenge. Not from rage. But from the quiet kind of clarity that comes when you finally stop waiting for people to become who they never were. The meeting with my lawyer was scheduled for 10 a.m., but I got there half an hour early. Not because I was anxious, but because I wanted to walk into that office feeling prepared. I wanted to sit in that waiting room with the calm of a man who'd already made peace with his decisions. The receptionist greeted me with a polite smile and motioned toward the glass door at the end of the hallway. He's ready for you, she said. Go right in. I nodded, adjusted my jacket, and walked in. Julian Ross was the kind of lawyer people didn't expect me to have. Young but sharp, with a memory that could hold an entire courtroom in place. He wasn't the loud type. He didn't boast or throw around legal jargon to sound important. But when he spoke, you listened. He stood up and shook my hand. Miles, he said, with a small nod. I've been expecting you. I sat down across from him at the polished table, the windows behind him casting light onto a stack of neatly arranged folders. One of them had my name on it in bold letters. I watched as he opened it and flipped to the page already marked with a yellow tab. I reviewed the case file last night, he said. Everything you forwarded, the emails, the login activity, the forged credentials. It's all solid. There's enough to move forward with charges if you choose to. I didn't say anything right away. I just let him keep talking. He adjusted his glasses and leaned forward. But before we file anything, I need to ask, what outcome are you really looking for? I took a deep breath. It was a question I'd been circling for weeks, even before Talia's betrayal became public. I'd asked myself in the dark, in the silence after long shifts, in the quiet moments between study sessions. Did I want her punished? Did I want her in handcuffs? Did I want her publicly dragged through a trial? Or did I want something else? I don't want revenge, I said carefully. I want protection. I want a record of what happened. I want her to know that she can't move through life wrecking people and think it won't catch up. He nodded once, slowly. So you want to file a report? Make it official. No press. No public case, unless it escalates. Exactly. He tapped his pen against the folder. We can do that. And I think you're making the right choice. This isn't about burning bridges. It's about keeping her from burning the next one. That line stuck with me. She'd burned so many bridges she thought she could just walk across mine without looking down. But now the bridge was closed. We spent the next hour walking through every piece of evidence. Julian was meticulous, making copies, organizing each file into its category, financial misconduct, digital intrusion, identity impersonation. He highlighted Talia's attempts to access my student portal and her fabricated wire instructions. Everything was there. Everything tracked. It's rare, he said as we wrapped up. Most people don't come this prepared. You built a case before it even started. I looked out the window for a second, watching the traffic blur in slow motion down below. I didn't build a case, I said. I built a safety net. She just happened to fall into it. He closed the folder, sealing everything with a red band. You'll get a call from the bank's legal team in the next 48 hours. They're finalizing their side. Once they file their internal report, it'll be logged permanently in the fraud database. What happens to her after that? I asked. Julian shrugged slightly. It depends. She might lose her ability to open high-limit accounts. She'll be flagged on certain real estate applications. If she tries to get a loan or sign a lease, it'll raise alarms. The damage won't be instant, but it'll follow her. And that was enough for me. Not because I wanted her life ruined, but because she needed to feel something. Accountability. Even if it didn't come in the form of flashing lights or courtroom drama. Sometimes the quiet consequences were the ones that lasted. As we finished up, Julian handed me a fresh copy of the report. "Keep this," he said. "If anything else happens, anything at all, call me first. You've handled this like a professional." I shook his hand and nodded. "Thanks, Julian, for not treating me like a victim." "You're not," he said. "You're just someone who knew better and proved it." I walked out of his office into the bright hallway, the report tucked under my arm. As I stepped into the elevator, I didn't feel heavy. I felt light, like I'd finally handed off a weight I'd been carrying for far too long. On my way home, I passed a cafe Clara used to love. I almost turned away, but something made me stop. I walked in, ordered 2 drinks, 1 black coffee for me, 1 latte she always liked. I sat by the window, not expecting her to show up, not even tempted to call her. I just watched people live their lives, crossing streets, pushing strollers, arguing over parking spots. It reminded me that the world keeps turning no matter who tries to throw you off balance. I stayed for 20 minutes. When the drinks cooled, I left them there. A reminder to myself, some habits you don't need to carry anymore. That evening, I filed my own report with the student financial department, making sure every change to my trust account was documented and secured. I requested a dual authentication setup and a password change on every single platform. I wasn't waiting to be surprised again. I'd learned what I needed to learn. And now, I was protecting the man I was becoming. One step at a time. One file at a time. One clean break at a time. It started with a voicemail. I was walking home after my late-night hospital rounds, earbuds in, zoning out to some lecture recording, when my phone buzzed. I ignored it at first. My head was pounding, my feet were aching, and the only thing I wanted was silence and sleep. But when I finally checked, I saw the notification. One new voicemail. No name. Just a number I hadn't seen in a while. I pressed play. "Hi, it's Clara." Her voice was soft, slower than usual, like she'd rehearsed the message 10 times and still wasn't sure it sounded right. "I don't expect you to respond. I know I don't deserve much of anything right now, but I just wanted to say I'm sorry. Not for her. For me. For standing next to something I should have spoken out against. For pretending it wasn't happening because it was easier than facing it. I saw what she was doing, Miles. I did, and I didn't stop it." She paused. I could hear a shaky breath. "I didn't defend you when you needed me. I didn't ask the right questions. I didn't even offer you the benefit of the doubt. I just let her do what she does, and I pretended we were all still one big happy family." Another pause. "I don't want anything. I'm not calling to fix things. I just needed to say this out loud. Because you were right. About all of it. And I hope, someday, that someone stands beside you the way I should have." The message ended there. I stared at my screen for a while, letting the words settle like dust. I didn't feel angry. I didn't even feel sad. Just empty. Like whatever part of me had been holding on to the version of her I used to love had finally let go. I didn't call back. I didn't need to. Her apology wasn't for me. It was for her. She was trying to close the door. I was at the library, printing out research notes and sipping bad vending machine coffee when I looked up, and there she was, walking across the lobby, holding a folder against her chest like a shield, her hair pulled back, wearing a sweatshirt that looked nothing like the polished woman I used to come home to. Our eyes met for a second. She hesitated. I didn't. I went back to my notes. I heard her footsteps come closer, slower than usual, cautious. Then she stopped at the edge of my table. "Can I sit?" I shrugged without looking up. "It's a public space." She sat across from me but didn't speak right away. Just watched me underline something in a textbook and flip the page. "I meant what I said in the message," she said. "I heard you. I'm not here to fix things." I know. There was a strange peace in how dry my responses came out. No fire. No frustration. Just truth without weight. "I just wanted to look you in the eye," she continued. "Because the last time I saw you, I still thought she was telling the truth." I finally looked at her then. Not because I was curious, but because I wanted her to see what was left behind after everything had been stripped away. "You believed what you wanted to believe," I said. Because believing in me meant having to admit who she really was. She lowered her gaze. I couldn't face it. I kept telling myself that she wouldn't go that far. That you just misunderstood. That there was some explanation. I leaned back in my chair. There was an explanation. You just didn't want to hear it. She nodded, as if she'd already said it to herself 100 times. She's ruined everything, she whispered. No, I corrected gently. She revealed everything. There's a difference. I started packing up my books, sliding notes into my bag, unplugging my laptop. Clara watched, her hands folded in her lap. Are you really going to let them charge her? They're not charging her because of me, I said. She triggered the investigation. She accessed a restricted account. She forged digital documents. I didn't push that boulder off a cliff, she rolled it herself. She exhaled slowly. Then, quieter. I'm sorry for being blind. I zipped my bag and stood. I'm not angry anymore, I said. But I'm not coming back either. She looked up, eyes red but dry. I know. I left her sitting there, surrounded by strangers and silence. No words could rebuild what she let fall. No tears could water something that had already turned to ash. That library table had seen better conversations between us years ago, when we used to sit side by side, studying together, planning the future. But now? Now it was just a reminder of how far we drifted. Outside, the wind was sharp. I breathed it in like fresh air after a long illness. Letting go wasn't dramatic. It was quiet. It was peace without closure. And I was fine with that. There's a strange quiet that follows public downfall. Not the kind that comes with drama and headlines, but the quieter sort, the kind that creeps in through the cracks and stays. The kind that eats away at the noise people use to surround themselves with. That's the quiet I imagined followed Talia. I didn't hear from her for almost 2 weeks. No phone calls. No texts. No threats pretending to be apologies. But then one morning, as I walked through the hospital lobby on my way to rounds, I saw her. Not in person, on the screen mounted near the coffee shop by the entrance. It was tuned to one of those local morning news segments. The anchor was smiling, but the story behind her didn't match the tone. The headline caught my eye immediately. Fraud investigation unfolds. Former social media influencer under scrutiny for luxury real estate scam. The image beside it wasn't doctored. It wasn't old. It was her, Talia, sitting on the steps of the house she never owned, arms folded tightly, wearing sunglasses far too big for her thin face. The story played quietly, the audio low. But I didn't need sound to understand what happened. The segment showed snippets of property documents, blurred names, and voiceovers from investigators saying things like unauthorized wire attempts, identity misrepresentation, and civil penalties pending. I didn't stop walking. I didn't stare long. But I felt the shift. The fall had officially reached her doorstep. It was strange. There was no satisfaction in it. No relief. Just a quiet understanding that what needed to happen was finally happening. Later that day, Julian, my lawyer, sent me a text. They closed the file. Final report attached. Bank flagged her for financial misconduct, and she's blacklisted from high-level transactions for at least 7 years. Investigation dropped from criminal to civil, thanks to your cooperation and restraint. But her record won't recover easily. She knows that. That last part. She knows that. I reread it twice. Because that was what mattered most. Not that the bank knew. Not that the agents or realtors knew. But that she finally understood her image had cracked beyond repair. That the fake shine she'd worn like armor had peeled away. No more lies wrapped in designer shoes. No more smug speeches about her grind or connections. Just silence. From what I'd heard from a friend of a friend, her social media accounts were gone. Deleted. Not even locked. Just vanished. Every photo, every curated quote, every fake smile gone. Like she'd never existed at all. And maybe, in a way, she hadn't. Not really. The version of her that people followed, envied, listened to, it was always a costume stitched together with greed and mirrors. Now it lay in pieces. That evening, I got a knock at the door. For a moment, I stood frozen, watching the shadow through the peephole. Slim frame, arms folded, head down. I opened it slowly. It was her. No makeup, no sunglasses. Just her. Real and stripped. The air between us was thick. She didn't speak right away. Just stood there, hugging herself like she was trying to disappear into her own bones. I didn't know where else to go, she said softly. I didn't invite her in. I didn't move at all. She looked up, eyes rimmed red, voice barely above a whisper. I lost everything. I nodded once. You tried to take everything from me first. She swallowed hard. I thought you'd be too distracted to notice. That you wouldn't fight back. Because you thought I was weak. She didn't deny it. Didn't argue. Her silence was the loudest confession I'd ever heard. I never thought it would spiral like this, she added, stepping back slightly, like she knew she didn't deserve to be on my doorstep. They canceled everything. My husband moved out. My bank accounts are frozen. I had to move back in with Mom. I raised an eyebrow. The same mother who tried to guilt me into lying to cover for you? She's not talking to me now either. She was unraveling right in front of me, and the truth was, I didn't enjoy seeing it. I didn't hate her. I wasn't standing there wishing her more pain. I just didn't care anymore. That was the difference. She had lost the ability to affect me. Her actions no longer controlled my emotions. She wiped her nose with the sleeve of her jacket. I came to say I'm sorry. I know it's worthless now, but I needed to say it to your face. I looked her in the eye. No, I said. You didn't come to say sorry. You came because there's no one else left to ask for mercy. Her mouth opened slightly, but she didn't speak. You didn't feel sorry when you made the call, I continued. You felt powerful. You didn't feel sorry when you tried to destroy my future. You felt clever. You only feel sorry now because you've been exposed. That's not remorse. That's regret. And it's not for me, it's for yourself. Tears welled in her eyes, but I didn't reach for them. I don't hate you, I said quietly. But I don't forgive you either. Her shoulders sagged as if I'd pulled a plug that let all the air out of her. I started to close the door, then paused. You should go home, I said, and maybe figure out who you actually are without all the lies. Then I shut the door. No slamming. No yelling. Just the soft click of a boundary being reinforced. After that, I sat at my desk, opened my laptop, and picked up where I left off on my residency application. There were deadlines coming, interviews to prepare for, things that mattered more than holding on to anger. Outside, the night settled in, and behind it, a woman walked away from my door, carrying the weight of the world she once tried to place on my shoulders. I don't know the exact moment it happened, but at some point, everything she tried to take from me became mine again. Not just the money, not just the plan, but the belief. The quiet, powerful belief in myself that I had once tucked beneath someone else's opinion. That morning, I woke up before the sun, same as always. No dreams, no flashbacks. Just calm breath in a warm room. I made coffee, went over my study notes, ironed my shirt for my hospital shift. My phone buzzed with a message from my program director confirming my final rotation schedule. I was one step closer to residency. One step closer to what I set out to become long before her voice ever tried to rewrite my path. The irony still lingered sometimes, how she thought removing the money would stop me. As if a future that took years to build could be erased with one selfish act. But it didn't work. Because what I built wasn't just in a bank account. It was in long nights, quiet choices, and the willingness to start over when everyone laughed. That's something no one can steal. I walked to the hospital under a sky just beginning to wake. The streets were damp from early rain, the air crisp, and I felt sharper than I had in years. I used to dread walking past people who looked like they had it all together. Now, I realized they were probably just like me, holding themselves together with a little caffeine and a lot of quiet grit. At the hospital, one of the younger residents asked me how I stayed so focused. He said I always seemed calm, like nothing rattled me. I smiled. I've already been through worse than anything this place can throw at me. He laughed, but I didn't mean it as a joke. People talk about resilience like it's something you're born with. But mine was built. Hammered together out of betrayal and silence, out of watching people I once trusted try to gut my future and wear it like a trophy. But I stood, and I kept standing. That afternoon, I passed the house. Not the one I lived in, the one she tried to buy. The dream home with the glass walls and the private balcony she bragged about on that first call. It was still for sale. Price dropped. Still empty. Still echoing with the lies she wrapped around it. I stopped my car just long enough to look at it from the road. It didn't hurt. It didn't spark anger. It just looked unfinished. Like a story she started writing with someone else's pen. A fantasy she couldn't maintain. And it hit me then, she never actually wanted the house. She wanted the feeling of being untouchable. The feeling of power that came with taking something from someone who deserved it more than she did. She thought owning it would mean she mattered. She thought destroying my path would prove hers was better. But the thing about envy is, it never builds anything, it only tries to break. I drove away without a second glance. Later that night, I got an email from the admissions board. I was officially shortlisted for the residency program I wanted. One of the most competitive in the city. The kind of place where they didn't just look at grades, they looked at character, discipline, the fire behind the name on the paper. And I had all three. I sat there staring at the screen for a moment, not smiling, not shouting, just breathing it in. This was the life I'd built brick by brick, while she was busy stealing wallpaper. She never understood the difference between appearances and foundations. That's why hers crumbled. A few days later, I received a letter in the mail. Handwritten. No return address, but I knew the writing. Inside, it was short. You didn't destroy me. I destroyed myself. Thank you for not finishing the job. I'll carry this lesson longer than any punishment ever could. T. I folded it and placed it in the drawer where I kept old notebooks and exam flashcards. Not because I needed to remember it, but because it reminded me how far I'd come. That someone else's collapse was never my mission. Survival was. That weekend, I visited my grandfather's grave. I hadn't been back in a while, not since I'd started med school. I brought a fresh cup of black coffee, just the way he liked it. Sat beside the headstone and updated him on everything. The exam I passed. The hospital I'd rotate in next. The betrayal. The way I stood my ground. I didn't yell. I told him. I didn't fight ugly. I didn't post anything or try to ruin her life. I just let the truth catch up. The wind moved through the trees like it agreed. As I stood to leave, I whispered, "You were right. Calm wins." That night, I returned to my apartment, made dinner, and left my phone on silent. There were no emergencies. No chaos. Just peace. The kind that doesn't shout, but settles deep into your bones. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't rebuilding. I was simply living. There were no more threats. No more gloating. Just a quiet man in a clean kitchen, preparing for a tomorrow that no one else controlled. And somewhere out there, maybe she was sitting in a smaller room, wondering how everything slipped through her fingers. But that wasn't my concern anymore. Because my future was never hers to steal. It was always mine. And now, it was fully, finally, beautifully in my hands.